Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm on Guam, so it's about 5 o'clock in the morning my time, so I'm not sure where everybody else is. But today we're going to be talking about OSHA inspections. My name is Nadia Holm. I'm a health and safety manager out of the Guam office. So just as a reminder, if you haven't already done so, the OSHA Form 300A should be posted on your job site from February 1st until April 30 in a noticeable location. I put mine up the other day. So OSHA inspections, why do they do inspections? So a couple of reasons. One would be an employee complaint. Sometimes employees will actually file formal complaints with the OSHA office, which would trigger them to do an inspection. A lot of times it is disgruntled employees if they get fired or they're unhappy for some reason. If there's a fatality or an accident, that could trigger an inspection as well. It doesn't necessarily need to be a serious accident or one that results in a fatality or hospitalization. It could be other types of accidents as well. Programmed inspections, so sometimes they just randomly select businesses to do inspections at for no apparent reason. Imminent danger, either an OSHA inspector can see some kind of danger, or sometimes they get reports from other people that there's imminent danger on a project and they may do an inspection then. Referrals, EPA or some other entity could be doing an inspection and they see something that is concerning to them and they may make a report to OSHA. And then they may do follow-up inspections for any reason. If they do an inspection for any of these reasons and they have a concern, they may follow up to make sure that it's been appropriately addressed. So you have a couple of options when OSHA does show up at your site. You can either let them in without a problem, or you can request that they come back with an administrative warrant. A lot of times they will actually come with an administrative warrant. So in that case, you really couldn't turn them away. But typically, it's always best to be cooperative and let them in. If they don't have an administrative warrant, they will get one and they'll come back and they probably won't be very happy that they got sent away. So it's always good to be cooperative with inspectors when they come on the site. Steps of the OSHA inspection. They'll start with an opening conference, and we'll talk about each of these steps individually, followed by a walk around the site, employee interviews, record reviews, and then they'll do a closing conference. And I didn't say this before, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to stop me and we can have discussions at any point if anybody wants to talk about anything further. So our opening conference, OSHA inspectors will meet with management and explain what prompted the inspection. They'll describe the scope and the expectations. So, you want to be polite and respectful, of course. We don't want to be volunteering information. Of course, we want to be honest and open with them, but we don't want to give them more information than they're requesting, because sometimes that opens up a can of worms that we didn't want to. You want to inform members of the team. So obviously the project superintendent and the project manager would be two people you'd want to have available when we're doing the inspection. We also want to inform Kim Edelman, our corporate safety director, let her know that they're on site. Obviously the time difference can be tricky because I know she's sleeping when I'm awake, but you definitely want to let her know. You want to ask for the officer's credentials. This kind of sounds silly that you would have to, but I've read stories where they've actually had fake inspectors go out and issue citations to companies. I think it's just the inclination. If you get a citation, you're going to pay the fine. So they've had fictitious inspectors go to sites in the past. So you want to make sure that they are legitimate inspectors before they come on your site. And then we want to provide a basic site orientation, discuss PPE requirements, our emergency procedures, and just basic information about the project. I've heard of people doing like full on, couple hour orientations just to buy time, but I don't know that that's a good practice. Typically those inspectors will see what you're doing and be a little frustrated. So part of our ECC procedure, we want to bring our external project inspection summary form. So this kind of goes through, all the different aspects of the inspection, kind of helps us document it as we go, because sometimes that's really important information afterwards. We want to have kind of have an idea of what was looked at and what potential violations we could have. So the OSHA inspectors are going to be walking around the site. Obviously, we can escort them. We want to have a fair number of people available when we do escort them. Have a representative who's able to talk and provide good information without providing too much information. We want to kind of direct that the walk around, kind of take them to areas that we prefer that they would see. If they're on a program inspection, they don't necessarily have a specific scope, so that the whole site would be something that they'd be interested in looking at. If they came for, like, say, an employee complaint, the scope of their inspection might be very limited to a specific area. So we want to take them directly to that area and not, maybe not show them all the other stuff that they could potentially see, and just kind of be really direct about where we take them. So the inspectors will be permitted to take photos and videos to show the site conditions. As a general rule of thumb, anytime an inspector takes a picture, we should also take a picture, both from their perspective and from other perspectives as well. They may take measurements, air monitor, sound monitor, those kinds of measurements. They may point out apparent violations on the site, and then they're going to try to minimize disruption of work. So some good practices, we want to assign somebody to be a representative. We want them to be honest and direct, but not, as I mentioned, not provide too much information. We want to take photos of anything that OSHA inspectors take photos of. So, I previously mentioned that. We want to have a representative that's ready to address any kind of safety issues that come up. So a foreman, a carpenter, somebody like that, it's good to have them walk with you. So if there's comments that are made about hazards or whatnot, have somebody available that can fix them right away. Don't take inspectors to areas that are not in the scope of their inspection. We want to provide guidance and direction. We want to kind of lead them to where, to paths that we want them to walk on and areas that we want them to see, rather than allowing them to kind of dictate where they go. And then, of course, don't volunteer information. So their employee interviews are part of the process. They try to do simple and short interviews with employees that are going to be simple and focused towards employees' responsibilities, their level of training, and their understanding of hazards. They don't typically like the employers to participate, just because I think it kind of prevents workers from maybe being honest, I guess. Translators may be needed. It depends on your job site. On our site, we have a lot of workers that, English is not their first language, so they may feel more comfortable having a translator. And then after the interview with OSHA, we try to have a company representative do a post interview, just kind of ask them what kind of questions they had and what their responses were. And they may or may not want to give that information, but I think typically they do. So document reviews, they may ask you for OSHA related documents. So, OSHA 300 logs, AHA, silica exposure plans, those kinds of things. Sometimes they'll ask you, they want to view them at the time. Sometimes they will ask you to provide them after the fact. And then with any kind of response that we give to an inspector, we want to keep it concise and to the point. So, if they ask for an AHA, if they want a specific AHA, we should give them that AHA, not other types of AHAs. If they want a specific section of an APP, we should give them that section rather than the entire document. And then our closing conference. This is where they're going to discuss any kind of potential findings. If they intend on giving a citation or violation, then they may mention it. They may not. So if there's issues that were corrected during the inspection, that should be noted. If something that couldn't be corrected, we want to get some contact information so we can let them know when those items were closed out. And obviously we want to close them out right away. This might be the time when they ask to view documents. And then before the end of the conference, we should be asking the inspector if they plan to issue a citation. Sometimes they know, sometimes it goes to their director and they don't make the decision, but it's always good to ask, have that dialogue. So the results of our inspection, the results of the inspection, violations can result in citations or fines. So, a citation is basically an acknowledgement that there was a violation. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a fine imposed. You can have both, but sometimes you just get a citation that does not come with a fine. They have up to 6 months to issue the violation. So, from the date of your inspection, you should mark your calendars, because up to 6 months later, they can issue that citation. And a lot of times they will not do it immediately. My husband's company just got a citation from an inspection that happened about 5 months ago. So it can take several months to see these citations or violations. The violation will describe what requirements were allegedly violated, proposed penalties, and a deadline for corrective action. Obviously, if there is any kind of concerns that are brought up in the inspection, we'll want to get those fixed right away. So if they were to have a deadline for corrective action, we should have already had the corrective action done. You can appeal the violations. We're allowed to have an informal consultation with the OSHA area director to discuss the violation. And then we have 15 working days from the receipt of the violation to formally contest the violation. So our types of violations, oops, go back, sorry about that. So we have a willful violation. That's when the employer demonstrates intentional disregard for a regulation or blatant indifference to employee health or safety. So the fine for that just recently went up in the middle of January. It's $145,027. If the violation results in somebody being injured or killed, there can actually be some criminal consequences as well. A serious violation, the employer knows that there is a hazard that can result in an injury or death and does not resolve it. So the fine is going to be based off of the seriousness of the violation, up to $14,502, and it can also result in imprisonment. So other than serious violations that do not result in an injury or death but do compromise employee safety, the maximum penalty is the same as the serious, which is $14,502. But it really is going to depend on the type of violation, the seriousness of it, the business's history, and then good faith. In these cases, OSHA may give you a citation rather than a fine. De minimis conditions, technical violation that does not directly impact the health and safety of the worker. So this could be a really minor thing, like not wearing gloves, or just some kind of really minor thing that doesn't seem like a big deal. Failure to abate the citation. If you don't abate the citation by the date that's given in the citation, then that could result in another fine that would be actually considered a willful violation at that point. And then, of course, repeat violations, kind of the same thing as a failure to abate, can be viewed as it would be viewed as a willful violation. Obviously, if it's a repeat violation, you know that you're doing something wrong and you're not correcting it. The issue with some of these things, obviously the willful and the serious, and those are pretty big fines, and and obviously something that we can accept is a serious issue. But sometimes with, like, say, a de minimis condition, we may get a citation that doesn't come with a fine. Maybe it doesn't seem like a big deal, but if we have a repeat of violation, even with a de minimis condition, then that would be considered a willful violation. So even if we have a de minimis violation, we still want to address it, and we want to fight it if we can, because we don't want to have these repeat violations. So the top violations in the construction industry in 2020, fall protection, there was 5,424 violations. Hazardous communication was second with 3,199. Respiratory protection, scaffolding, ladders, control of hazardous energy, powered industrial trucks, fall protection training, iron face protection, and number 10 was machinery and machine guarding. So our OSHA Voluntary Protective Program, this is something that ECC's participated in, I think, since 2005. Basically, the VPP program recognizes employers and workers in the private industry who implement effective safety and health management systems and maintain injury and illness rates below the national average. So to participate in this program, we would apply for it, and then we undergo a rigorous on-site evaluation with OSHA. And then every 3 to 5 years, we would have a reevaluation. So when we're part of this VPP program, we are exempt from program inspections. We can still have other types of inspections if we had, employee complaints or some kind of other trigger for an inspection. We could still have those, but they just wouldn't give us a programmed inspection. So in the VPP, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, the MRD division out here in Guam, we have our VPP in 2020.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
We got our VPP in 2020, the MRD division out here in Guam.
Oh, okay, nice. So in the VPP, management workers and OSHA work cooperatively to proactively prevent injuries. So some of the aspects that they're looking at when they come out to do these VPP audits are going to be hazard prevention and control, worksite analysis, training, management's commitment, and then worker involvement. So OSHA's mission, as frustrating, as intimidating as it can be when we have OSHA inspections on our sites, it's important to recognize that we do have the same mission, which is to ensure the safety and healthful working conditions for our workers. So, it's just another piece in our safety program. We need to work with these inspectors and these programs to make sure that we have the best program for our workers. So it's important to remember that we do have the same goal. All right, that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
You had said if they show up, you can turn them away. They don't have an administrative warrant. What do we have a company stance on this? I mean, I know we want to be as helpful as we can, but at the same time,
Right.
we're looking to protect not only the employees, but also the company. Do we have a company stance on what to do in that situation?
Yep. So in that situation, we would let them on the site. I don't think there would really be many times when we wouldn't want to be cooperative and allow them onto the site. If they don't come on, if we don't let them on, they will go get a warrant and they'll come back anyway. So, it is always best to be cooperative and work with them. So yeah, we would let them on site. That would be our policy.
Okay. Along that line, both the next two questions are both in line with that, and that is, the next one is when they come up with a complaint or inspection, whatever, are they going to have documentation basically showing what it is that they're going after. I know that would be outlined in the administrative warrant, but I mean, are there specific complaints that are going to be brought? Say, hey, these are what we're looking to inspect.
So yeah, during the opening conference, they would give all the information about what triggered the inspection and what their specific scope is. You know, if it was a employee complaint, they probably wouldn't give you names of people who made the complaint, but
Right.
they would give you some basis for what the complaint was and why they were doing it. Sometimes you can figure out who it was based off of that information, but you know, they would give you, during the opening conference, they're going to give you some specific details about what triggered the inspection and what their specific scope is.
All right. My last question was, you said that we'd want to do we have forms for OSHA inspection. Trying to look at the exact wording you had used.
I will send that form out to everyone.
OSHA, yeah, I was going to ask, where would we find that?
Yeah, so it's a external inspection form. So, you know, it just kind of lists, helps us kind of keep track of the inspection, you know, names of inspectors, the scope of the inspection, and any kind of items that were discussed or concerns that were brought up. So yeah, I can send that out to everybody.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had for questions.
All right, thank you. All right, anybody else have questions? Has anybody else had inspections on their sites that they want to talk about? I've actually only had about 2 inspections on my site. Neither of them had any citations, but it is it's intimidating when they show up at your job site. On Guam, one of the people that comes out of the Hawaii office, she's an industrial hygienist without any construction background. So sometimes it's really important to kind of understand the background of the inspectors and kind of get an idea of what kind of things they'll be looking at. So I know when she comes on the site, she's going to be looking for things like silica exposure plans, respirators. A lot of times they're looking at hand wash facilities, things that we may not be really high hazard things in the construction industry. But sometimes they are tuned into those things that, you know, we may not pay that much attention to sometimes because we're sometimes more focused on the higher risk stuff. So it's important to kind of know what their background is and kind of get an idea of what sort of things they may be looking for. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap it up.
I have one question.
Sure.
This, Rich, according updated COVID regulations on as far as OSHA, what has the outcome came? Because I know it was up and down, and they were going to add it to their citations or you know, the requirements. Has anything came through with that? With their what the penalties are or what they're looking at?
That's a good question. So luckily we haven't had, I'm knocking on wood right now, we haven't had a lot of impact from COVID on our site. But I have heard there was a construction company here that we have on Guam, we have a lot of H-2B workers that live in barracks and whatnot. So we had one company here that had 300 or 400 cases. You know, somebody got infected in their workforce housing and infected everyone else. And they actually did have 2 or 3 fatalities. So I've heard that they've had to note that on their 300 log. You know, they've had to actually call them, you know, worker fatalities, and all of the time that the workers were out, they've had to call lost time. So I'm sure they're contesting that, but you know, that could be a pretty serious blow. You know, it's despite our best efforts, people do get COVID, and you know, I've been extremely careful throughout this whole COVID situation, and I'm sitting at home at this moment with COVID. So despite our best efforts to try to mitigate those things, obviously it's a global pandemic and there's a lot of people that have been affected by it and we don't have control over that. So it's really hard when you have to call it a worker fatality or a lost time because of it. I don't know what the ultimate outcome is going to be, but as far as I know, that's they're OSHA's holding our hand to the fire with those things.
Okay.
Hey, Nadia, this is Rick
Mhm.
Mendenhall. Got a quick question here. When they're presenting their credentials, is there any way to validate those credentials? Because typically you don't really know what you're looking at until you really know what you're supposed to be looking
Sure.
at.
That's a great question. I would have to follow up, get some more information. Take pictures of their credentials, make note of the names of the inspectors. I'm sure you could call the OSHA office and ask them if they actually did send out an inspector. But yeah, as far as that goes, yeah, if they're going to be fake inspectors, they're going to probably go the whole 9 yards, right, and have fake credentials and maybe even use the names of OSHA inspectors that do
Or give you the
actually
wrong
exist.
phone number to call.
Sure.
So,
But that's a good question. I don't know if anybody has comment about that. I mean, at the time that they're doing the inspection, it may not be the time you want to go and validate that. You may end up taking them on the site walk anyway. I think knowing the proper protocols and how citations come out and the correspondence that you would have with the OSHA office is kind of helpful in knowing that if an inspector did come to your site and they tried to get you to pay a citation right away, then that's kind of a red flag, right?
yep.
But yeah, that's a good question.
So this is Jim Bob. So I actually had on one of my site visits to a project, I actually had an OSHA inspector come out to our government project out in Camp Pendleton, and he actually observed something from another project. So he came out, walked onto our project, identified who he was, did his open conference, but he was difficult because when we asked him for his credentials, he flipped his wallet and closed it and didn't give us enough opportunity to get his name, and so we asked him again, and my boss was actually able to snap a photo of it before he jerked it back. So OSHA inspectors can be difficult, and this individual was during this visit. So to answer your question, it could be a scheduled visit. It could be just they observed something from a different project, which has happened to me a couple of times. So just depends.
So we actually had an inspection here a couple years ago where they said it was imminent danger, and somebody was operating a piece of heavy equipment from pretty far away, and the inspector came on site and said that he thought it was imminent danger because the operator wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and there was just no way from that distance that he could tell that the worker wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And I don't know if you can call that imminent danger in that situation, but they can call it whatever they want, and we can't really say anything about them coming on site. You can't really argue if they say this is imminent danger, we're coming on site to do your inspection. We don't have to agree with them, but we can't really argue either.
Also, this is Jim Bob again. So during the inspection, one of the things that we were informed on with my past employer, we used to hire former OSHA inspectors to do training for us. And one of the things that we were instructed was never walk in front of and guide the OSHA inspector, because every hazard that you come across and walk by, that's a violation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think you could, you want to kind of guide them in a way. I mean, maybe without leading them, that's a good point. You could maybe walk side by side and kind of guide them without being directly in front of them, might be a better strategy.
Right, and in most cases, we actually walked a little bit behind them, and we're just kind of tell them, go straight. It's just past this point, take a left, and and they just, went that route. But we definitely directed them straight to whatever item they were looking for.
That's a good point.
Nadia, this is Alvin Harvard in North
Hi.
Carolina. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes. I think the wisest thing to do is just follow your guideline when OSHA comes on site here in North Carolina. If we was to experience OSHA on site, we immediately call our safety manager, and by the time they get to the site, they will handle any difficult aspects of it. But you merely just let them have their way. And
Right.
the only other type of inspections that I've been interviewed by is NADFAC here on the Air Force Base and on Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point. And as you indicated, they're not there on the most part to create a problem. I think when OSHA comes out, it's really an incident has transpired, and that's exactly why they're out there.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the questions and everybody's attention.